Today's video is again brimming with consumer advice. Basically, I'm going to show you how to overclock the balls off of your AMD Ryzen APU based Ultrabook. That's definitely a topic I think that would appeal to the average Ultrabook user. The exact laptop that we're looking at today is this, which is the Asus VivoBook 14. Now this laptop I bought from an Amazon warehouse deal about a month ago to see if those deals are worth it. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. I'll have it linked in the description below. I kind of forgot what happened in that video, but I think it was interesting. Now the main reason that this little loser book is interesting to me is the fact that it's got a Ryzen 3 3200U APU in it, which is a dual-core 4-thread CPU with Vega 3 graphics built in. Now the Vega 3 iGPU is essentially the same iGPU that you find in the Athlon 200GE. Now that is a very budget-focused desktop APU, but in good conditions you can kind of play the occasional game on it. The thing is though, this 3200U in here is not only shackled by the thermal constraints of the tiny little cooler on it, but this laptop also only has 4 gigs of RAM. And considering how an APU works, it means that you've only got 500 megs of video memory for the iGPU and 3.5 gigs of system memory for the CPU. And neither of those are enough. So we're gonna have to sort out the thermal solution and add some more RAM, and then maybe we can overclock the balls off of this APU to get some decent gaming performance. But before we do any of that, let's see what kind of baseline gaming performance we get from this shackled little Ryzen 3 APU. Oh, and then just quickly before we get into the baseline benchmarks for this video, because I'm gonna have to contort the laptop into some weird positions for the overclocking section of this video, I'm actually gonna benchmark all of the games on an external monitor at 1080p. Now the exact monitor was actually sent over by Gigabyte. It's the Gigabyte G27F, which is a $250 1080p high refresh rate IPS monitor, which is pretty good. I'll have it linked in the description below. Okay, so clearly this system is not designed to game at 1080p. Even at low settings, GTA 5, which is a pretty old game, yeah, it's not what I'd call playable. Now, the first thing that I'm gonna do to try and improve this performance is alleviate the massive memory bottleneck that we have here, because 500 megs of video memory is very little. So what I did was bought this 16 gig stick of DDR4. And look at how cute it is! It's so tiny! If you compare it to a normal stick of RAM, it's so little. There we go. It feels super consensual every time. So this is what we're working with here, and as you can see, we only have access to 1 RAM slot, and that's actually why I bought this single 16 gig stick as opposed to 2 sticks, because there's RAM soldered onto the other side, I'm assuming. Here we can see the root of our cooling issue. That's not a particularly beefy cooling solution we have going there. So I'm gonna replace that with something a lot more badass later on. Let's just slip this RAM in here. You put it in, and then that was really easy. So just like that, we've got 20 gigs of RAM in this system, which will completely remove the RAM bottleneck situation. Hopefully, we'll see how much of a performance difference that makes. That made a pretty big difference. The results are a lot more playable in both GTA 5 and Rainbow Six Siege. They're still not amazing results, but they're definitely better. Now the next step is gonna just to try and see what the limits are of the current thermal solution in here. Now what I'm gonna have to do is, considering that this isn't a gaming laptop with any kind of overclocking features, the best way to actually get more power to the APU is by using this Ryzen controller software to actually increase the wattage that gets supplied to the APU so that it can run at higher frequencies. This may not go very well considering the actual cooling solution on this chip. So let's see what happens if we take it from 15 watts to 25 watts. Oh wow, we actually kneecapped the gaming performance in that one. It's a bit weird, but there's a good reason for that. Basically what would happen is the APU would clock itself higher for a little bit, giving better gaming performance. But then it would very quickly hit that 86 degrees Celsius thermal limit that I set for it, and then the frame rate would kind of tank. Now we need to get to the meat and bananas of this video. We're gonna put some better cooling on this laptop and see what happens. What is the maximum unshackled performance of a 3200U? Okay, let's have a look. Oh, it comes off nice and easy. We've got the thermal paste application over here. It's such a tiny little chip, look at that. This is how I'm gonna go about my first attempt at doing some better cooling on that little APU. Now this looks a bit janky, and I promise you that it is gonna be pretty janky, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna work. Now, the reason that I have it propped on two Ryzen boxes is that I still need access to the power button. And I have it open upside down like this because I'm just gonna take the air cooler, I'm gonna put some thermal paste between the two and then just kind of rest it on there. Now, I've established in a previous video that gravity is kind of enough to create reasonable thermal contact with a tower cooler like this. So I actually think this is gonna work. I'm pretty confident that this isn't gonna be a disaster. The only issue is this motherboard doesn't actually have like fan headers, so I'm gonna have to use like an external power supply with a fan controller to be able to plug the fan in, and then I'm just gonna jump the power supply so that it's running the whole time. But I think this is a pretty ingenious solution to my problem. But first we have to do the very important Neko test. Okay, now Neko-chan, which one do you prefer, this one or this one? Oh, well, I mean, it seems like he's answered. So I've just spent about 20 minutes looking, and I finally found this Molex to fan connector thing. So I'm just gonna kind of, wait, is that? Oh, I have to admit, there really aren't many things in the world I hate more than Molex, but look at that, we got it in! It's not pretty, but hopefully it works. Now it's clearly starting to become pretty not safe for work here. We've got some naked laptop contact going on here. And I'm really excited to see how this is gonna perform. I mean, I feel like this is a 100% legitimate way to game, right? Like this is how everybody should game. The problem with this setup is if you get overexcited, that cooler is just gonna tumble onto the desk, which is not something you want happening mid-gaming session. No way, look at those temperatures. I guess that's what happens when you put a Hyper 212 Black Edition on like a 20 watt TDP APU. Even under full load, you're getting 38 degrees Celsius. So as you can see, the core frequency of the CPU is nice and high, and the boost frequency of the APU is also very high. And it's obviously gonna stay there because, well, the temperatures are just so low, like it's not got to worry about anything. So let's run some benchmarks, see what kind of performance gain we get, and then we just try and push it until it explodes. So now that we've unshackled the beast of thermal limitations, let's try and push this TDP rating up here. Oh, not 55. Oh no. Okay, I'm just gonna do that. Okay, so we're gonna take it to 35, see what that does, and then we're also gonna increase the maximum frequency on the GPU. So this way, it still is in charge of what it does itself, but it can go until it feels it's not safe anymore. I'm just gonna be stupid about it now and take it all the way up to like 55. Why not? Let's see what it does, because checking this monitoring while running a game, it does actually use about 35 watts. So yeah, if we push it higher, better, right? Now, unfortunately, we've hit a little bit of a brick wall here, because no matter how much extra power we let the system endow the chip with, it can't really do anything with it. And unfortunately, I can't overclock the iGPU more, or just the CPU either. And we're also running into memory limitations, because we don't have any BIOS features for overclocking on this motherboard. I can't allocate more memory to the actual iGPU. So we're hitting a VRAM limitation as well at this point. So unfortunately, this is kind of all she wrote, but we did get more than 100% performance uplift from the system, which is pretty cool. I actually think this went really well, and we got a pretty surprising boost in gaming performance from this. So with that, if you enjoyed the video, thank you very much for watching. Subscribe to the channel, like the video for more content like this. Check out my Patreon and all of that stuff linked in the description below. And until the next video, bye-bye.